So, what is an informational interview and why would you need one? An informational interview is an opportunity to gather information about either a company, a role, or even a broad field of interest. This will help you fill in maybe some knowledge gaps and also help you figure out if a company is really as good an opportunity for you as what you think it is on paper, or if a role is something that would involve things that you actually enjoy doing, or whether maybe while you match well as far as experience, maybe the day to day is not something that interests you. The important thing to note here is an informational interview is not a job interview. So you're not going into an informational interview asking for a job or asking for an interview. It's more about gathering information that'll help you with your job search in the future. So if it doesn't lead directly to a job offer, what is the benefit of doing an informational interview? There's actually a lot of benefits. You get a lot of advice on pursuing particular roles that are interesting to you. And this is not just advice on how to obtain new skills, but some of this advice is something that you can implement right away. You can discover skills that you already have that are in high demand, and this will help you get through the initial applicant screening process and get you into interviews for more roles. It's also a great way to grow your network, which can lead to access to some what we'd call hidden roles down the line. These are roles that are not publicly advertised, but that having connections with a network that knows your interests and knows your skills can suggest you for. And it's a great way to build confidence in talking to industry professionals in a less stressful environment than a job interview would be. I mentioned that this is lower stress than a job interview, and it should be. In fact, even though it's called an interview, you want to think of an informational interview more as a networking opportunity than as an interview. And because of this, you can be more casual. This is about building a professional connection. People will respond well to you and to wanting to help you in the future with genuine positive interactions. While in a job interview, it's normal, it's almost kind of expected for applicants to be a little bit nervous, maybe even with preparation, even a little bit scripted. You can be a lot more relaxed in an informational interview. Be yourself, and if they ask you questions, you can say things that you maybe wouldn't in a job interview. You can share things that maybe you wouldn't like about certain roles, maybe things about your current role that you don't find especially positive, because this will help them think about how to guide you and even to connect you to roles they know you would enjoy in the future. Now that we've gone a little bit over the overview of an informational interview, let's move into the steps of the informational interview and some tips and strategies to get the information that you need and make a positive impression in each step. We'll start with the steps to take before the informational interview. So the main thing you want to figure out is you want to know what you want to know. This will not only help you formulate questions for the interview, but also will help you find people. If you're doing cold reach outs on like LinkedIn, this will help you find people who are going to be able to answer your question, who are going to be more responsive to you because they can tell that you are reaching out to them for a specific purpose that they can help with. You might want to know more about the field, whether it's biotech in general or a specific area of research, say immuno-oncology, gene therapy, certain segment of companies that you're interested in. You can also use it to dispel or confirm assumptions, either about the industry or about specific roles or the company that you've heard. You can get advice on how to enter either the field or to pursue specific roles. It's a great way to learn more about a company that you're specifically interested in applying to. It's a good way to build recognition for hidden opportunities. If this is your goal, expect to see it pay off further down the line. Before we go into formulating questions, there's two things I'd want you to consider about yourself and be prepared to answer before formulating the question, before going into the interview. And that's why you're interested in either the company or the role. What is the information that you would find most valuable. Think about your values and what you would prioritize in a role. Because as you are hearing about the company or asking about the company or the role, you want to think about, what would my ideal role look like? What do I know that I never want to do? Or what do I know that I really don't enjoy? And that'll help you figure out how to formulate the questions, how to lead off of other questions, and also ultimately make the decision whether this is something that you want to continue to pursue. These are also questions that your interviewee might ask you. And so while you don't need to prepare to answer as many questions as, say, a job interview by far, these are some basic ones to have the answers to not only help yourself, but to be able to interact with the flow of the conversation as it's going forward. Just like preparing questions, the research you need to do before an informational interview is nowhere near that you would need to do for a job interview. But you still want to read a little bit about the company your interviewee is working at, a little bit about the interviewee, even if it's just reading through their LinkedIn, and a little bit about the field that they're working in. Now, this can be a little difficult as far as field and company, especially if you're new to the industry. If there's something that you are really unsure about, be open with that in the informational interview. It's a great opportunity to have that missing information filled in, but do look into making sure that everything that's readily available isn't something that you're spending the majority of the time talking about. Now we finally get into preparing questions. And I'm going to divide questions into 4 main categories. You don't need to cover all of them. In fact, if your main interest is about the company, you probably don't need to ask that much about field or how to enter the field. And vice versa if your main question is about the field. But in general, I'd separate the questions into 4 categories: about them questions, about the company questions, about the field questions, and about how to enter the field questions. Starting with about them questions, you can ask them about their career history as well as about their current role. You don't want to get too personal with these kind of questions, especially with the initial introduction. But it's also really helpful to focus on these questions initially at the start of the interview rather than jumping into questions about the company or the role. It just starts off on a really nice, personable foot to ask them to share a little bit about themselves. Questions you can ask would be, how did your experience prepare you for your current role? What do you find most exciting or frustrating about your job? What is the one thing you wish you could have done earlier to prepare for the role better? So these will answer questions about their role as far as whether it's a good values fit for you, but also about how you could potentially be preparing better to apply to a role like they have. And questions about the company, you want to focus on what kind of environment you like to work in and whether the company meets that requirement for you, whether you would be happy working there regardless of whether your skills are a good fit or not. Questions about the company you can ask them is, why were you drawn to your current company? How does the company reward or recognize its employees? And what's the one thing you wish could be improved by your current company? For about the field, this can be a little bit of a difficult question, as I mentioned, depending on how much information you already have from maybe other networking connections, how much independent research you've done. And best case scenario is if there's something about the field that's really confusing to you or you don't feel like you have a great grasp on it, don't be afraid in this less formal setting to ask about it. To get a little more in-depth questions, where do you see the field going in the near future? Or what's the most exciting recent development in your field to you? And then lastly, this is an interesting question about how to enter the field. You don't want to come right out and ask for a job opportunity, but questions about how to enter the field are a way to indicate that you are interested in a similar role or similar company, that you're maybe looking in the near future without coming right out and asking for a job. So you can ask, what skills are most in demand for a role like yours? Or what experience do you recommend I pursue to be a stronger applicant? And this will also help you build a stronger CV or resume for applying to roles in the future. The etiquette as far as setting it up, let them take the lead in setting the time to meet. Be as flexible as you can with their time and try to limit it to 30 minutes or less. You'd be surprised the information you can get out of a well planned 15-minute informational interview, but typically 30 minutes or less.